Kayla Cross is charged with DUI refusal. She's pleaded not guilty. The city says it cannot comment on whether Cross was terminated or whether she stepped down voluntarily and would not disclose whether her departure is connected to the DUI crash. According to a West Fargo police crash report, the collision happened while Cross was crossing Cheyenne Street onto an I-94 entrance ramp. The woman in the second vehicle was traveling south on Cheyenne. Police said it's not known which driver had the right-of-way. Cross also is fire chief of the volunteer department in Mapleton, North Dakota. The mayor says city officials don't plan to take any action until Cross's court case has been resolved. Don Haney, News Radio, KFGO.
An initiated measure requiring term limits for North Dakota's legislators and governor is a step closer to appearing on the November general election ballot after its sponsoring committee submitted approximately 46,000 signatures to Secretary of State Al Yeager. If Yeager determines that at least 31,000 of those signatures are valid, voters this fall will decide if the state's constitution should be changed to limit governors' terms to 2 and a cumulative years of service in the State House and Senate to a maximum of 8 in each. Term limits established by the proposal would not apply to current office holders unless they choose to run for another office, nor would service prior to the change be counted against future runs. Well, the Bakken's oil boom appears to be slowing down. North Dakota Mineral Resources Director Lynn Helm says a word he heard many times when he met in Texas with executives from 10 oil companies with wells in the Bakken is mature in describing the state's oil patch. Helm says the Bakken has been rebranded. He says U.S. oil producers are more focused on growing production in Texas and New Mexico. Helm says while North Dakota could still see small annual production increases, drilling is expected to taper off in about a decade. According to ESPN's Chris Mortensen, the Indianapolis Colts will look to trade or release quarterback Carson Wentz once the new league year begins on March 18th. On that date, Wentz receives a bonus of $6.3 million. The Colts owe Wentz $15 of the $50 million the former Bison quarterback is set to make next season. However, a trade would save them about $13.3 million in cap space. Minnesota State Fair, they're at it again. They're having the kickoff to summer at the historic fairgrounds. Registration for tickets must be made by the end of the week. It's scheduled for May 26th through the 30th and will again feature favorite State Fair foods, live music, attractions, and specialty shops. Kickoff to summer was held for the first time ever last year. It was a welcome back event after the pandemic forced cancellation of the 2020 State Fair. KFGO Weather Center forecast from meteorologist Tom Szymanski. Today, mostly cloudy, breezy, high of 22. Tonight, overnight low of 6. Tomorrow, we're going to drop a little bit colder than today, high of 10, partly to mostly cloudy and breezy. Thursday, we're going to drop even more, a high of just 1 and a low of 16 below. I'm Madison Quinn, News Radio, KFGO.
Thanks for keeping it locked into 790 AM and 104.7 FM. KFGO, I'm Tyler Axe, is going to be with you until that 5 o'clock punch out. And as I was saying, before we got you caught up on some local headlines with Madison Quinn, lots to cover today. But one of the situations that has been ongoing, we've had conversations about what it all means, in particular when it was going on in Ottawa, this blockade or trucker convoy, whatever you want to term it, what's going on closer to home in Emerson, Manitoba, north of Pembina here in North Dakota, is the fact that it's ongoing. And you've got demonstrators who oppose a variety of things. Yesterday, though, why we're going to revisit this ongoing situation, because Governor Doug Burgum came out and shared his frustrations while he was out here in Fargo. And I wanted to get the perspective from our neighbors to the north. And to do that is Greg Mackling. He is the co-host of The Start, which is the morning show on CJOB. Greg, how are you doing this afternoon?
Doing very well, Tyler. Thank you for the rush, for bringing us in, making me feel welcome. That's outstanding hospitality.
Greg, all of that goes to my producer, Eric Johnson. When he started playing, I'm like, okay, I see where he's going here. So that was for you, my friend. I'm glad you appreciated that as well. And welcome to KFGO down here in Fargo, North Dakota. These situations, I mean, we've been following it here from what feels like afar in Fargo. We were following along with what was going on in Ontario, Ottawa, where you've got that port. It seems like maybe things got freed up a little bit, but now we've got this Emerson situation, which is a little bit closer to home for many of the people listening to me right now. And I'm just curious, from your side of our border that we share, what are you hearing about this whole situation?
Well, it's gumming up the work substantially, and not to overwhelm you with any numbers, but the Ambassador Bridge that connects Windsor and Detroit is obviously a critical piece of the infrastructure with regard to automobile manufacturing, and that contains and moves about 25% of all trade between Canada and the U.S., about $400 million per day. Well, we received the numbers just last night at CJOB in Winnipeg, and we did some mathematics, and if we calculated it right, there's about $50 million per day that moves through that border crossing at Pembina and Emerson. So it's about the fifth busiest international border crossing between our two countries. And, you talk about the integration of the automobile production lines from Michigan and Ontario. Well, we've got to localize it for you. We've got a similar situation with transit bus manufacturer New Flyer, which is based here in Winnipeg. Their sort of world headquarters is in Winnipeg, but they've got manufacturing facilities in St. Cloud, Minnesota, but more close to home is Crookston, Minnesota, just east of Grand Forks. And so there's a situation where they actually start building the buses in Winnipeg. They weld the frames up, and they basically build the shells of the bus. And then they go on a flat deck trailer, and they make their way from Winnipeg to Crookston, where they sort of just kind of continue the assembly line, separated by about 250 kilometers or just over 150 miles. But it's supposed to be seamless, and the border is just sort of supposed to be a paperwork check, and away they go. Well, that's completely blocked, has been completely blocked since last week, and it shows absolutely zero signs of changing at the moment. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police are there. They haven't handed out a single ticket, despite the fact there are dozens of vehicles blocking the roadway. All that's getting through there at that crossing, as we understand it, is live animals that might be crossing the border for a variety of reasons.
Greg, my next question is, we've been told now for the last couple of weeks, especially the Windsor situation, that this is all about anti-mandates, whether that's vaccines, masks, whatever it might be. Do you gather, is there more going on than just being opposed to these pandemic mandates as to being the driving factor?
Yeah, when this all started about 3 weeks ago, that convoy, and the language is interesting now, right? Because convoys typically move. Well, they stopped moving a long time ago in Ottawa. In fact, they've been there for almost, I think it's 19 days now, and they're parked in Ottawa. They passed through these parts about 15 days ago, and there were hundreds of vehicles, if not, thousands would be a stretch, but there were hundreds that passed through Winnipeg on their way to Ottawa, and there were lots of people that joined in, and it was under the guise of anti-vaccination, mandatory vaccinations, anti-mask mandates, and also in Manitoba, if you want to go to a restaurant right now, you have to present what's called your vaccination pass. It proves that you've had 2 shots of one of the vaccines. So that, of course, was the proclaimed reason for the caravan, for the convoy. But there's much more to it than that. Some of the demands extend all the way up to and including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stepping down. Some of the individuals or leaders of this freedom convoys, they've pegged it. They want to have a seat at the table. In fact, they've asked to have a seat at the table in conversations about what happens with public health policy moving forward. And so, yeah, there is more to it than that.
Well,
absolutely, Tyler.
Well, and Greg, I'd appreciate it because I asked that question because in the back of my mind, I've been wondering, okay, let's say that we give them what they want. What they stated up front, saying, oh, we don't want these mandates. They're hurting us. Okay, that goes. Do they go home?
No. Some of them will. We've got a protest in downtown Winnipeg, and for the listeners that have been here, you might know our legislative building is in the heart of downtown. For those that have never been to Winnipeg, Winnipeg's a city of about 750,000 people, almost 1 million in the metro area. So it's a big city. Imagine the state capitol in Bismarck or in St. Paul. Beautiful domed building in the heart of the city. And there have been several dozen truckers, quote-unquote truckers. I'll get back to that in a second. But all sorts of different types of vehicles, farm machinery, trucks, campers, etc. They've taken over sort of a couple of square block area in that part of the city. Some have decided to go home because the Manitoba government announced last Friday that they were going away and moving away from the mandatory mask starting March 15th and the vaccination pass. March 15th. The mask go away March 1st. That vaccination pass I was telling you about goes away. Some of them have said our job is done here, but others have said no, until the government in Ottawa steps aside, we're not going anywhere. We still have work to do, and that's what we're hearing in Ottawa because Ontario at the same time is moving away from a lot of their quote-unquote restrictions, public health orders.
Greg Macklinger, he's the co-host of The Start, CJOB in Winnipeg. Greg, elaborate a little bit more. He said these truckers, and you said, I want to get back to that. I get the impression that these aren't all truckers that we're talking about that are taking part of these blockades.
90% of Canada's population is double vaccinated, Tyler, and we've been told by the trucking associations right across this country that the vaccination percentage in truck drivers closely mimics, if not exactly mimics, that of a general Canadian population. We know that months ago, before Christmas, we were hearing about issues with the supply chain, in particular up and down the West Coast. Port of Los Angeles, I'm sure your listeners know how many ships were hanging out waiting to get into the Port of LA. In Vancouver, we had some serious flooding and infrastructure damage, which severely limited the amount of trucks that could get from the west coast of Canada. In fact, they had to come down in through northern United States to get east from the Port of Vancouver. And so anybody who's a truck driver, whether they are double vaccinated or not, which is what needs to be done in order to cross the border now, in both directions, it's a Canadian government regulation and an American, anybody who wants to drive can drive. And I had a truck driver friend of mine. She doesn't drive anymore, but she has 2 million crash-free miles under her belt. And she begged me, can you please stop calling these truckers? Because anybody who's gainfully employed and wants to be can either drive north and south with their vaccination proof or east-west, within Canada's borders without it. So anybody who wants to be driving right now can be driving. And it's perfectly obvious that actual truck drivers...
Just before I let you go, Greg, I could have this conversation all day. In fact, we might have to schedule time to continue it because, from my side of the border, I don't see it ending anytime soon, but I hope I'm wrong. But my final question is, because I think I saw today that Justin Trudeau did enact some emergency powers that haven't been done in quite some time. Can you elaborate on what he is trying to attempt up there?
We're not sure exactly what the goal is here because really what it does is it puts an exclamation mark on the powers that the government already has. These emergency powers haven't been invoked. They used to be called the War Measures Act, a little bit more of a daunting name. In fact, it was his father who put them in place back in 1970. That's the last time these or some version of these powers were invoked here in our country. They were revamped, the rules, in 1988 and haven't been used since. And so essentially what it does is, as I say, it puts some exclamation marks on the power that the government really already has, what police forces already have. There have been some questions about whether or not the military will get involved. The Prime Minister says absolutely not. But each province has to it's sort of like in the United States when you have a state of disaster, you have to request federal support. Same sort of thing under this declaration from the Prime Minister. And our Premier here, the equivalent of a governor, has sort of said, we're not interested in this. We're going to sort this thing out on our own. And at this point, that means the Royal Canadian Mounted Police sitting watching these vehicles that are parked across Highway 75 on our side of the border, sitting there doing nothing. They haven't issued one single ticket, Tyler.
It's got to be so frustrating as well. I could only imagine sitting there, not to make light, twiddling thumbs as you're saying, well, at what point does this start to resolve itself? And Greg, I tell you what, as this does develop, promise me you'll answer when we call again. I had a great conversation. I just don't have enough time today. Promise me you'll do that next time.
Hey, I know all about it from your side. There's never enough time. And if I'm giving you what you need, Tyler, it'd be my pleasure to join you again.
All right, Greg. Hey, I appreciate it. You take care of yourself, and we'll chat again soon, all right?
You bet you. Have a great day. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, you do the same. Greg Mackling, he is part of CJOB, part of that morning crew that is up there. In fact, a co-host of The Start. Going to get you some of these messages, more Afternoons Live right after this.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. Right. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Now, here's the important thing that I gleaned from our conversation with Greg Mackling up at CJOB. When asked, because this is how it's being reported, that these are all blockades or what you want to call them, convoys, and that they're all they're gathering because of their opposition to vaccine requirements. And that's why asking if, in fact, this requirement just goes away. You're seeing some of that take place, whether it's, down in the Twin Cities, the proof of vaccine requirement or negative test to go to a restaurant. You're seeing these start to just kind of fizzle away. But asking the question, if, in fact, these requirements are gone, do these protesters or whatever, people that are just quite frankly opposed, do they go home? And to hear the answer being no tells you that there's much more going on. There's much more behind this than just some opposition to these requirements. And reading from some of the first eyewitness reports from Ottawa, there's just a real anti-government sentiment. I mean, when you're saying, we want a seat at the table, that's fine. You've got ways of which in a democracy to go have your seat at the table. This isn't exactly one way to achieve that. But to call for the stepping down of Justin Trudeau or others, again, not the way of what you're going about. But if that's what they're going to be hanging out on the street corners waiting to do, it's going to be going on for a very long time. And if you're hearing the math that CJOB just put out $50 million a day, that's just in the port that's north of where I'm sitting right now, Pembina, Emerson. That's a lot of change. That's a lot of economic impact from that one port. I know there's people that have texted in wondering if they expect these blockades to spill over to smaller ports of entry. I don't know. It's something to be keeping a watchful eye on. You think about this port up here, Pembina. You think about the next one being quite a drive west. I mean, I think it's 125, 150 miles west is the nearest port. That's also time and money that's being impacted around this whole thing. Going to switch gears here. We'll continue this conversation a little bit later on, but let's pick up another one we started a couple of weeks ago. Castleton soybean plant. Let's get the economic development side next.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek Hansen, Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that?
It Takes Two.
Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning.
Jerkins News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voice of Sports.
Too tall,
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Accent Kitchen and Bath, your custom bathroom and kitchen destination. Get started today.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead. It is 22 degrees. It's 2:30. I'm Madison Quinn from the KFGO News Center. An assistant Moorhead fire chief who was cited for DUI test refusal after a collision in West Fargo is no longer a member of the fire department. City will not say whether Kayla Cross was fired or whether her leaving is related to the collision. Crash took place at Cheyenne Street and 994. Driver of the other car was seriously hurt. Cross is also the fire chief with the Mapleton, North Dakota Fire Department. Mayor says the city will not take any action until the case against Cross is resolved. After a lengthy discussion, Grand Forks City Council gave preliminary approval last night to a development agreement to bring a corn milling facility to North Grand Forks. Legal package with the Chinese-based Fufeng Group spells out the framework of the deal. Members also endorsed a series of engineering service contracts for the project. Prior to the vote, the city council took comments from the audience. Moreto agribusiness owner and state representative Jared Hagert says the project is a win-win for the economy of the city and the state.
And North Dakota deals in commodities, in energy and ag.
I mean, that's where our revenues come from. So anytime that we can have a facility of this magnitude come into our region as a producer, it's a tremendous benefit to us.
Others in the audience are opposed to the plant. For various reasons, Grand Forks resident Betsy Perkins has environmental concerns.
What are we in Grand Forks doing to help save the planet? Instead of subsidizing this processing plant, I would like Grand Forks to be a leader and set example for other communities by saying no to Fufeng and instead create a climate change mitigation plan.
Council voted 5-1 and 6-0 on the motions respectively. Final approval on this latest step in the plan is expected next week. KFGO News Time, it's 2:32, currently 22 degrees in Fargo-Moorhead. "23 degrees in Fargo-Moorhead. This is KFGO News. Former Minneapolis police officer charged in George Floyd's killing says he was relying on fellow officers to care for Floyd's medical needs as he controlled onlookers as the police tried to arrest Floyd. Tu Tao is one of the 3 former officers charged in federal court with violating Floyd's constitutional rights. Tao held back bystanders while officers knelt on Floyd's back and held his legs. Thao took the stand as the fired officers began presenting their defense. Voting continues today in Minneapolis among teachers who are considering a strike against the district. Reporter Laura Oakes.
At issue are class size, staffing, along with wages and benefits. The voting is expected to last through Thursday, and results are expected that day. Minneapolis Teachers Union President Greta Callahan.
And in addition to this legal process, we've been petitioning, rallying, marching on the governor's mansion, and we haven't seen the change we need from our district leaders.
St. Paul school teachers are also considering a strike. Their vote is scheduled for all day on Thursday. Any strike authorization vote would be followed by a 10-day cooling off period before a walkout would begin.
Throughout the COVID pandemic, tourism industry has been one of the hardest hit sectors, losing billions in revenue. Explore Minnesota Tourism Director Lauren Bennett McGinty says she's optimistic more Minnesotans will hit the road in 2022.
We do expect that with the Omicron variant having hit its peak and sort of coming down at this point, that hopefully we'll start to see travel go back up. But we don't expect to see a full recovery until late 2023 or early 2024.
Over the past 2 years, the Minnesota tourism industry has lost nearly $12 billion as a result of the COVID pandemic. The KFGO Weather Center forecast warming up here in Fargo-Moorhead. Now 23 degrees, mostly cloudy and breezy, some blowing snow in the open country tonight. Overnight low of 6, mostly cloudy skies. Tomorrow, partly to mostly cloudy and breezy, some blowing snow in the open areas. Morning high of 10 degrees. Then steady or slowly falling. Thursday, just a high of 1, and we'll have a low of 16 below Friday. Mostly cloudy and windy, chance for light snow and blowing snow, high of 25. Saturday and Sunday, mostly cloudy, chance for light snow Saturday night and Sunday, highs between 20 to 25 degrees. I'm Madison Quinn, News Radio, KFGO.
I'm going to get to Rusty Halverson in a moment, part of our Farm and Ranch team here, award-winning Farm and Ranch team, but we are keeping tabs on Joe Biden, president, talking about Russia, Ukraine. Any news comes out of that, we'll break in, we'll tell you about that. But Rusty, you've been working diligently as ever on a Tuesday afternoon.
Thanks, sir.
Well, not just afternoon, you've been all day. All day you've been running around, getting stories.
Stuff.
Visiting.
Stuff.
Talking.
Stuff.
About a lot of stuff, yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff to talk about, though.
Yeah,
when it comes to agriculture.
Madison Quinn in the newsroom, a story that KFGO broke earlier, talking about the coverage of a Grand Forks City Council meeting and a proposed corn milling plant in Grand Forks. There are those that are in favor, those that are opposed, critics concerned about the effects could have on nearby residents. Critics concerned about what it means to do business with a Chinese company. But I spoke to a gentleman that testified on in favor of this project at the meeting last night, Jared Haggard. He's been farming near Emerado since the 1990s. He's a graduate of NDSU. He served as a volunteer for several commodity organizations, including the United Soybean Board, and he's gone on the record to support this corn milling plant venture. And Jared says it's a positive for corn producers because it's another end-use location or a buyer of raw commodities, but it expands beyond just crop producers. Now, Jared and I talked just moments ago. I haven't had a real chance to cut up all the audio of our conversation, but I think especially when it comes to the Livestock Alliance in North Dakota, which is supported by corn producers, soybean producers, and whatnot, when we can expand that livestock footprint in North Dakota, that's a thing that a lot of people can get on board with.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's not surprising. Hearing that, there's some people that maybe not here. Maybe I'm opposed to a variety of things. We're going to continue that conversation because it's not isolated Grand Forks. It's to be expected. I think it's how you, I think, build up to it, how you get people involved early on in the process that hopefully minimizes some of this. But there's also that when you're talking about that added value and the benefit that goes beyond just the one plant. A lot of people in agreement nod their heads there, too.
Yeah, and Jared and I talked about just briefly messaging or getting the message out, educating folks about what these different plants could mean on a larger scale, I guess, is, yeah.
That further down the road glance is kind of what you're getting at here.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll pick up that conversation further on down the road.
Yeah.
Coming back next hour?
Well, yeah. And, this was just another vote is expected on this, I believe, next week from the city council. And just visiting with Jared, he was agreeable to visiting more about it down the road because not the last time we're going to be talking about it.
No, there's no doubt. These things don't happen overnight most of
the
time. So.
Yep, that's true.
Rusty, I appreciate it. You come back next hour, all right?
Thank you.
Rusty Alverson, him, Sarah Heinrich, multi-award-winning agriculture journalist, going to get you caught up with CBS National News headlines. We're heading out to Castleton. Melissa Beach is the Community Economic Development Director. We talked about the state-of-the-art soybean processing plant being discussed out there. Let's talk about the economic development side next.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. Right. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Robertson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen, Couch
790.
Potato Radio. Did you see that?
From It Takes Two.
Doug here with the morning crew this morning.
Jerkins News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces.
Too tall,
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
It wasn't very long ago we were visiting with some residents in Castleton that did have some concerns, not about the project itself, but about the location of this proposed state-of-the-art soybean processing plant. And we had a number of feedback at the iConsultants of North Dakota text club at 35270. And I said, look, this conversation not going anywhere. In fact, we want to talk about the community and economic development side. And what better person to visit with about that than Melissa Beach, who is the director of the Community and Economic Development in the great city of Castleton. Melissa, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate your willingness to come on and chat about this state-of-the-art soybean processing plant. Yeah, I mean, there's one of those things that I think people agree with the concept, but of course there's always that, well, does it have to be here? And I'm just curious from the economic development side, how involved is the city in the process and the permitting of this proposed soybean processing plant?
Yeah, well, we've been very involved. So I personally began working with the two parties that are working on this proposed site in December of 2020. So it's been a long road to get to where we are today. We did start bringing in neighbors and city representatives and township officials in July and August of 2021. So those conversations have been going on for a long time. But the companies really have been doing an extensive search, nationwide and within the state for a number of years, really trying to narrow down the best location. So a lot of conversations have gone on in the last year or so, but really they've dug into one particular site that they're interested in.
Yeah, that site being located just maybe I'm reading maps wrong, which wouldn't be the first time making a mistake. It's just on the west side of Castleton, right? Kind of on that northwest side.
Yeah, just
okay,
west
perfect.
side of the Castleton. Yep, about 2,800 feet from the city limits, the current city limit. Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to that outside the city limits, how does this, aside from jobs and that development, benefit the city of Castleton, I guess is the question I have.
Yeah, so that is a good question, Tyler. And this is kind of a unique site because it's within the city's extraterritorial zone. So the city does have some say over what happens within that zone. But ultimately, the townships are also involved in the conversation. So that's actually right on the line of two townships, Castleton and Everest Township. But when we're looking at this as a big project, really for the area, for the region, we've been very involved with Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC as well. The economic impact of the jobs, of course, is phenomenal. Those 50 to 60 jobs to be created with above average salaries and a fantastic benefit package. I mean, we look at this as these are really good jobs to be created in the community. But ultimately, the economic impact is much larger. And so seeing that other income come into either the city or the area through homes to be built or just to other businesses that really could use a shot in the arm after the last 2 years that they've had as well.
Melissa, I'm curious, when it comes to the studying of this, we talk about the economic benefits, and there was conversation the last time that we dove into where this is right now, what's going forward. Was there any impact done or impact study on something like trucks? I know I was throwing out there that there's going to be an increase in trucks and traffic throughout the city, a concern about perhaps the closeness and the smell that it brings. Did the economic development, did the city go forward and kind of study what that would look like?
Yeah, so the city has probably gotten involved a little bit later in the conversation, more along the lines of the ordinances that would be involved. We've had some conversations also with other companies that deal with kind of similar processing, smell, noise, things like that, to get a little bit of guidance on what have they run into. Minnesota is more strict, and so we're actually suggesting that the company begins working on some Minnesota kind of guidance there to provide even a higher standard, because it is close to the city. And the company has said they want to be good neighbors. So really kind of working through that from the noise and smell piece, and then the city also working on their ordinances. As for the truck traffic, that's something that's been maybe misunderstood. I think, most truck drivers would tell you they'll take the path of least resistance to get to a facility. And so really any truck traffic would be routed around the city. There's a great county highway. They can take the interstate and head north if they're coming from the south. So really avoiding the community. I think the options are then, of course, if they're grabbing lunch or if they're grabbing fuel, certainly that would be a great benefit to our businesses also. But the majority of the truck traffic would be routed around the community to avoid any other impacts.
Melissa Beach, our guest, Community and Economic Development Director in Castleton, talking about the state-of-the-art soybean processing plant that's been discussed. I'm curious, Melissa, you mentioned that the city got maybe involved a little bit later. With that, a question, was it the state that was really driving the earlier stages of this? Was it the companies coming and trying to find that spot? Just walk me through how it got to the point and then the city comes down with the ordinance if you can.
Sure. I think, that's kind of part of the question, Tyler, that people have asked also is how do these processes work? And unless you're really involved with economic development every day, you might not know the real process. So a lot of times leads do come in from the state. So a company might be poking around and they contact the state directly. The State Department of Commerce had worked with this company for a number of years and on alternate sites. And so they connected through Department of Commerce and then to me directly. The reason for the city not getting involved early on really was because of the location outside of city limits, and then also that they hadn't submitted anything. So still nothing has been submitted in terms of a zoning request or a permit of any sort. So there are several hurdles still to go through that, the city and the township would provide feedback on each of those processes. But so that's kind of the stage in which the city would get involved, and it is appropriate to do so.
I think that's a fair response. And me being a novice when it comes to the whole development side, you're right, process. And that's what my question was. In fact, I just visited with my farm and ranch reporter about it's not identical, but it's kind of a similar conversation up in Grand Forks about the process of putting a plant there for a different crop and how it shakes out, just so that right. What we're trying to do here is provide, look, if people are opposed, to location, all right, well, how do you try to get everybody on the same page? How does that process work? So I'm glad that you're able to come on here and explain it for me, some of the listeners as well that had questions. What did I miss about this proposal? It sounds like it's early in the process. What's that next step then, Melissa?
Sure. Well, the next steps really would be for the company to consider, what would be the preferred traffic route, and then they would also be, working with the county, Cass County, on what that traffic route might look like. I think they've also, connected really well with the neighbors to understand their concerns and take that into consideration. And their plans have changed slightly over the last 2 weeks after taking some of the feedback, and really strongly trying to consider all their alternatives. So I do think that we're on the right path as a community, and just really kind of helping others to understand what information is coming out. The engineering is still being done, so a lot of these plans are really fluid and changing also. But we're getting there, and I think as we get out more information, it's just been really difficult when, I've had certain things that I've had to keep in confidence, and again, that's part of the economic development process. But otherwise, very pleased with the company and the way that they've been treating the community, and pleased with the community's patience level also in understanding that that's part of the process.
Very good. Melissa, I have enjoyed the conversation. I tell you what, let's do it again soon, all right, as this does continue down this process into becoming reality.
Sure, we'd appreciate it.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Melissa. I'm going to let you go there. I had a little bit of a break on the end. Melissa Beachy is the Community and Economic Development Director. Castleton, your thoughts, 35270. Got a couple of them coming in, but I got to get you this Too Tall Tom Schmansky weather update. We'll wrap up the first hour. Afternoons live on a Tuesday afternoon next.
Robertson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek Hansen, Couch Potato Radio. Did you see
from It Takes Two.
Doug here with the morning crew this morning.
Perkins News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces.
Too Tall Tom.
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
So today on the MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all
When it comes to this, I don't even know. Do you call it a debate? I mean, you've got some concerned residents. Not about necessarily the project, about the location. And I understand that. I've got maps here about this proposed soybean plant. The thing that struck me following the conversation a couple weeks ago, and then quite frankly, what we just got caught up with on the economic development side, is, okay, there's a process that's playing out. And to hear, taking it on the ward, because I have no reason to doubt what Melissa Beach just said, that even after that conversation that we had just a couple weeks ago, that there's been conversations had, hopefully with those that are concerned. And I'm sure we'll be following up to see, okay, are we getting some of that resolved when it comes to the trucks, when it comes to, the location probably is not going to go very far. People don't want to always go on record. And I get it to an extent, but sometimes, boy, it can be frustrating. And, that's why I asked the question, if the city is getting involved in this in that later stage, who is driving it at the beginning? And what it was alluded to me from those in the know, that it was, in fact, the state. And to hear, the State Department of Commerce is a big part of this. We'll have to continue the conversation as to, should it have started local? Is this just the way that it always plays out? Because now the process has been going on. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot left, but a great question comes in. If it's in the early stages, why does the North Dakota soybean already purchase the land? We'll continue the conversation right after this CBS National News.
Roberson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen, Couch
790.
Potato Radio. Did you see that
from It Takes Two.
Doug Miller with the morning crew this morning.
News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces.
Too tall.
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page. And send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. Right. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
So today on the MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Couple of on this date, since it's all 3:05 on a Tuesday. Breakfast Club premiered in theaters 37 years ago today, 1985. Kind of a cult classic. With this, or just,
Fantastic John Hughes movie.
Yeah. Here's another thing on this date. Chris Farley was born 1964. Would have turned 58. Yeah, now you do. Good pull on that one. You think about that era. I know we always debate what was the greatest SNL cast. You could go from the early parts of the Belushi's, the Murrays, but boy, when you had Sandler, Farley, and
early
Spade,
90s is real hard. A lot of heavy hitters in that cast.
Chris Farley was certainly one of those. So yeah, his birthday today. Well, I do want to get this up before we swing it on over to Paul Jurgens. I'm sure he's going to have more to say on this at some point. But we started off the show talking about what's going on up in Emerson. I did see that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police tweeted out that they are confident that a resolution has been reached and that demonstrators will soon be leaving the area and that full access to the Emerson port of entry will be restored completed by Wednesday. So that's the latest I just saw. In relation to the conversation we had just a little bit ago. In the meantime, here's some local headlines with Paul Jurgens.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead mostly cloudy, 23. An assistant Moorhead fire chief who was cited for DUI test refusal after a collision in West Fargo is no longer a member of the fire department. The city will not say whether Kayla Cross was fired or whether her leaving is related to the collision. The crash took place at Cheyenne Street and I-94. The driver of the other car was seriously hurt. Cross is also the fire chief with the Mapleton, North Dakota Fire Department. The mayor says the city will not take any action until the case against Cross is resolved. Police in Watertown, South Dakota were called to a downtown fire station early this morning on a report of an armed man who appeared to be intoxicated and was threatening to take his own life. Officers found the man in the station's lobby with a pistol. The man refused officers' commands to drop the weapon and threatened to kill himself. Officers fired beanbag rounds at the man and were able to take him into custody. Although the pistol looked like a regular weapon, it was an airsoft gun. A change to the state constitution that would place term limits on the governor and members of the North Dakota legislature is a step closer to bringing the issue before voters. Secretary of State Al Jaeger says backers have submitted about 46,000 signatures, or more than the 31,000 needed to put the proposal to voters in November. Jaeger has 35 days to review the signatures. The initiative would add a new article to the state constitution imposing term limits of 8 combined years each in the House and Senate. The governor could not be elected more than twice. It would not apply to current elected officials. Minnesota has finalized its new redistricting lines.
A 5-judge panel appointed by the Minnesota Supreme Court has released the state's new political maps. The redistricting is mandatory to account for the state's shifting demographics. Under the new boundaries, Minnesota's 2nd congressional district, represented by Democrat Angie Craig, saw the most change. Craig announcing today she will indeed run for re-election.
That is reporter Laura Oakes. KFGO Weather Center forecast. Meteorologist Tom Szymanski is expecting low 20s this afternoon. Mostly cloudy, still a bit breezy out of the southeast at 15 to 30. Remaining mostly cloudy overnight, 6 for the overnight low. Tomorrow, partly to mostly cloudy. Some blowing snow, high likely in the morning of about 10. Thursday, mostly sunny and 1 above. Fargo-Moorhead, 23. Paul Jurgens, News Radio KFGO.
It is fast approaching 3:10. As we're keeping it locked into 790 AM and 104.7 FM KFGO. Couple of things. You just heard that there is going to, and I suspect, it's going to get final approval, or it needs to get final approval from Secretary of State Al Jaeger. Term limits, the petition delivered to that office this morning about 11 o'clock. And by all accounts, if you're handing in approximately 46,000 signatures, they're going to meet the requirement. The threshold is going to be there. Question is, You voting for it? Term limits, North Dakota, when you're thinking about your legislature, is that something you're in favor of? Because there are a number of times which people have said what's going to resolve all of this is if you just put on those term limits. Get the good old boys out of office. Get that fresh perspective in there. You're going to have a real opportunity to do so. And the way of which it was written, interesting when you think about it. We'll have to get some clarification on this, because if you go through the petition, and if you go to Section 3, that the limitations established in this whole article, meaning those term limits that if you approve it are prospective. So, I mean, looking forward. Because you've got a number of lawmakers on the, what would say the far right side. I mean, Rick Becker, he's running for the nomination on the Republican side to get, to go to the U.S. Senate. So you see that name. You see, let's see here, Jeff Magrum out of Hazleton, North Dakota. He's made headlines for mind-boggling comments throughout the last legislative session. Jason Heidkamp, put those peas in a pod right there. Former legislator of Joe Miller. I believe it is because of the Park River. So you've got that individual that's been a part of this. Tom Kading right here in Fargo, another lawmaker, the Republican side. Nathan Tolman, Adam Anden, another lawmaker that's on this. Let's see, Ole Larson out of Minot. That's a name that's probably familiar. Speaking of Minot, you got Jeff Hoverson, Minot. Got a number of lawmakers on here on the Republican side, and it's not exactly just what I would dub the moderate group of that, but they went out there and they got the signatures. Because if you think about something that's had, I think, more bipartisan support over the last number of years, you think about money and politics, but you also think about the term limits. This thing gets on the ballot. I would not be surprised if it were to pass. My question is, are you on that side that says, yep, November, because this will be a November election. They submitted this after the deadline to get on the June primary election, which I'm fine with, because there's going to be more people that typically participate in those general elections, which happen in November. The question is quite simple. If you're a North Dakota resident, are you going to vote for creating term limits for your lawmakers? You've got some lawmakers that have been out there for a very long time. And the influence that they've been able to accrue over that term, very powerful. Think about Ray Holmberg up at Grand Forks. In fact, I think Ray, or Senator Holmberg, in Grand Forks is one of the longest serving lawmakers, not just in North Dakota, but in the entire nation when it comes to state legislatures. So you've got that term that has gone on for so long, and you think about what's been able to get done for that district, in particular up for UND. Because when we talk about the whole higher education system, and there's always a lot of focus on NDSU, and not always in the bright lights that it should be. And I'm not talking just about at the Fargo Dome on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, there has been a spotlight on NDSU for a number of years, and quite frankly, just within the last year, they're finally getting rid of, in time, President Dean Brashani. Well, if you've been following along with NDSU's been able to announce when it comes to their whole campaign to raise, do I dare say, a little bit of money, and then far exceed it in the Our Hands by the numbers. I mean, the In Our Hands campaign, they raised over $500 million down here to do this. The endowment grew from $134 million in 2015 to $457 million in December of 2021. So now we're over the $500 million mark, going for things like scholarships, going to things that support faculty, the facilities, programs, and it's a great accomplishment. For those that donated to this, great. For those that busted tail to raise the money, fantastic. Why am I bringing this up? Because they're out there doing things and investing in ways that which the state hasn't exactly kept up with in comparison to other areas. So I'm glad this was able to get accomplished here at NDSU, but when it comes to that whole power of being able to get dollars where you want them to go when you're a long-term lawmaker, Ray Holmberg's very influential of getting those dollars that's necessary up at UND. He's been there a long time. He knows the ins and outs. So that's the whole thing. When we're talking about the term limits, are you willing to part ways with having a lawmaker that's been there for a very long time because you want somebody new and fresh out there. Because if you're going to be saying that on a federal side, do you put it into practice on the local side? 35270, that's the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. You can also call into the Laney studio line, which is 237-5948. Question simple. If that gets on the ballot, you're for term limits. Do you vote for it? Yes or no is all I need from you. We'll have this conversation also. Yesterday, we had some people calling in up in arms about the old Durham report that came out Friday. I was able to dive into some of that, and I'll share you my thoughts with you and get yours on that conversation as well. I'm Tyler Axis. This is Afternoons Live on KFGO.
Robertson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen,
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that?
It Takes Two.
Doug here with the morning crew this morning.
Jerkins News Radio.
Amy Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces. Too tall, Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
I'm Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Messages in saying absolutely voting for it, throw the bums out. That's going to be a driving sentiment. I would not be shocked waking up and seeing that term limits gets passed in North Dakota. I mean, who campaigns? How do you campaign against it? Who campaigns against it? You got lawmakers that are on this measure. Now, here's what I would venture to say, because we've been watching this infighting on the North Dakota side. And it's not isolated to, in fact, I should broaden it out because you've been seeing it even on a federal scale. You're going to have, Donald Trump throwing out endorsements going into a midterm election. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. There's a lot of eyes on that U.S. Senate race on the Republican side right here. Who does he throw his weight on? Is it Rick Becker or John Hoeven? Has John Hoeven done anything to not warrant the Donald Trump endorsement? He hasn't voted very often against what the president then wanted. And to say that that's going to be the deciding factor, as some have, I don't think that's an accurate assessment at all, because if you recall, it wasn't very long ago in which Donald Trump did endorse a statewide candidate in North Dakota for treasurer, Daniel Johnson, who's on this ballot or on this petition right now to have those term limits. It did not work out so well for Daniel Johnson. Did it bump numbers maybe a little bit his way? Perhaps, but it didn't do the job. I'm not convinced that it would do it for Rick Becker either if he were to get it from Donald Trump against John Hoeven. The reason why I bring some of this up, that infighting that's happening nationally and right here, if you look again at the names that I just threw out there about who's all on favor of doing this, you've got kind of the same makeup of those lawmakers. They want to be able to get more of their mindset out there, more like them, and they haven't been able to do that at the ballot box. They have not succeeded very often when it comes to pushing out some of these more moderate Republicans. And if you've watched over this last year, some of those more moderate, they're and it's all within their right as a party. They're changing how you go and you get to be a part of the whole party. The fact that you have to pay to do this, you got to, if you want to be a legislative candidate, you've got to do A, B, and C. They are doing things that make it a little bit more difficult for, say, a Jason Heidkamp to go on and get an endorsement. Now, do you think, if you, as many people saying, yep, go ahead, get these term limits, I'm going to vote for it in November, you do, on the flip side here, just playing devil's advocate, run the risk of getting more of an Ole Larson type candidate because of the way of which they're out there running. There are both sides of this. So I'm considering, I understand the fact that there is sometimes a breadth of knowledge that gets lost. I think about some people that announced this cycle that they're not running for re-election, which is unfortunate because of what that does mean for pushing things forward. On the flip side of it, there have been people out there that, quite frankly, don't need to be serving anymore. Messages coming in about Rick Becker. Rick Becker is a loose cannon. The way of which he said he was going to retire from the legislature and now he's running for the U.S. Senate, it's head shaking. And to be fair, you know what? Rick Becker texted into this very program last week, and I did say you are invited to come in on these airwaves on this program anytime. And if he's listening yet again today, legislator Rick Becker, go ahead. You can call in 237-5948. Or if we can set up a schedule and make it work out for you, because it's open to you. If you're running as a candidate for the U.S. Senate, come on, we'll talk about why you're running against John Hoeven, what sets you apart to that. And I know that on the Democratic side, they have now a couple of challengers over there, which is maybe a little late in the game, but we'll certainly provide an opportunity for them to have a conversation as well as to why they are going. Asking for your term or asking for your vote. 237-5948. In fact, the reason I said term, because Tim wants to talk term limits, and I appreciate the phone call, Tim. How are you today?
Good. Say, I was going to tell you, North Dakota voted on term limits quite a few years ago, and it passed, and later was overturned by the courts and said it was unconstitutional. And guess what? When they voted on that, all the incumbents were voted back in at the same time.
How long?
So what does that tell you?
Yeah. Well, this is, Tim, it's one of those things. There's a pattern out there of griping about the way things are done. And we can certainly say Congress for sure, saying you look at the approval rating of Congress, yet everyone gets reelected over and over and over again. There's a disconnect there, Tim. There's no question.
Yeah, but you can look back. It was quite a few years ago that it was already voted on, and they said it was unconstitutional, so they threw it out.
I'll be curious as to what changed from that saying it's unconstitutional in the courts to what they critiqued in this one to try to bypass that court decision. Because, there are people I disagree with, but there are people that know their way around, say, an attorney's office to try to right the ship here on this one, Tim.
Yep.
Appreciate the insight.
Be interesting.
Will be. Are you going to vote for it or no?
I think it possibly could be good, but then there again, they should be able to be voted out too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. People say we got a term limit every time. We have an election every other couple of years to throw them out if you don't agree with them. There's no doubt. Tim, appreciate the phone call. Thanks for the knowledge, the history there. I'll have to look in to see why, in fact, it was thrown out there. I haven't made my mind up yet. I think that's quite obvious. And the fact that it's going to be on the ballot, I as Tim said, look, this has already passed before. I would not be shocked if it goes 2 for 2. I really wouldn't. And especially judging by the number of messages that I'm getting, there's a lot of people that are backing it, even if it's just to say, to heck with what they're doing out there, and getting this insurance keeps coming up as well, which that's a whole other topic of conversation. Tyler, I noticed that the sponsors of term limits exempted themselves. That's why when I look at it, I say I need clarification. When I look at the way of which it's written in this whole section, I'm not going to bore you with that, but if you are interested, you want to read it. It's section 3. When they talk about its perspective and the effect only, that's going forward. So those lawmakers that are on there right now, does that mean that they're waiting until their term and then they get into the cycle? There's some clarification that I need before I say, look, they're being a bunch of hypocrites. They're saying, look, this is for everyone else in the future, but not us. We're exempt from it. Because you got lawmakers out there that are signing up for this, trying to clear out some of the seats that are their neighbors. They should be a part of the same rules, should they not? We'll continue the conversation with that at another date. Here's what I want to do. Your electrical bills, you've been getting them in the mail, maybe online. You've been noticing that they've been spiking up. We're going to talk about that with Marshall Albrecht. He's with Cass County Electric. What's the reasoning for it? It's not just a penny here, a penny there. We're talking about big jumps. He'll explain perhaps some of the cause next. Also, later on, pulls and holes going on. The fishing derby in Detroit Lakes, I've got some tickets that I want to get from me to you. I'll visit with Brent Gerber about that later on. I'm Tyler Axis. This is KFGO Fargo.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
So today on the MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think.
News and weather this hour is brought to you by Muscatel Pre-Owned. Muscatel's was voted #1 by localsloveus.com for good reason. So stop in today at Muscatel Pre-Owned just off of Exit 1 in Moorhead.
Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy, 23 degrees. I'm Paul Jerkins. A Fargo man has now been charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, domestic violence, and theft after his arrest by Fargo police. 27-year-old Tyler Molnar is accused of stabbing his wife late Saturday night. The complaint says she was sleeping in the passenger side of their van when she awoke to find Molnar stabbing her and saying he planned to kill her. She jumped out of the moving van on 42nd Street South and was found by 2 citizens who reported that she was bloody and hysterical. Police say Molnar was arrested yesterday afternoon at the Fleet Farm convenience store driving a stolen pickup. Prior to his arrest, Moorhead police responded to a call of a suspicious man in a red van who was discarding items. The person was not located, but a wallet with the victim's driver's license was recovered, along with a bloody kitchen knife. The woman suffered stab wounds to her right shoulder, back, neck, and hand. An assistant Moorhead fire chief who was accused of drunken driving after she was involved in a crash that seriously injured a woman is no longer employed by the city.
Kayla Cross is charged with DUI refusal. She's pleaded not guilty. The city says it cannot comment on whether Cross was terminated or whether she stepped down voluntarily and would not disclose whether her departure is connected to the DUI crash. According to a West Fargo police crash report, the collision happened while Cross was crossing Cheyenne Street onto an I-94 entrance ramp. The woman in the second vehicle was traveling south on Cheyenne. Police said it's not known which driver had the right-of-way. Cross also is fire chief of the volunteer department in Mapleton, North Dakota. The mayor says city officials don't plan to take any action until Cross's court case has been resolved. Don Haney, News Radio, KFGO.
This is KFGO News. A change to the state constitution that would place term limits on the governor and members of the North Dakota legislature is a step closer to bringing the issue before voters. Secretary of State Al Jagger says backers have submitted about 46,000 signatures, or more than the 31,000 needed to put the proposal to voters in November. Jagger has 35 days to review the signatures. The initiative would add a new article to the state constitution imposing term limits of 8 combined years each in the House and Senate. The governor could not be elected more than twice. It would not apply to current elected officials. A former Minneapolis police officer charged in George Floyd's killing says he was relying on fellow officers to care for Floyd's medical needs as he controlled onlookers as police tried to arrest Floyd. Tu Tao is one of 3 former officers charged in federal court with violating Floyd's constitutional rights. Tao held back bystanders while the other officers knelt on Floyd's back and held his legs. Tao took the stand as the fired officers began presenting their defense. Investigators believe it was a stray bullet from an exchange of gunfire that struck a school bus driver in the face last week in North Minneapolis. A search warrant says the victim told police that 2 men with guns stopped their cars in front of the bus and fired at each other. 1 suspect was arrested. The bus driver was released from the hospital 2 days after the shooting. A Canadian man has been sentenced to serve at least 21 years in prison for plotting the death of a Bismarck man in what was a love triangle that involved a life insurance policy. 43-year-old Earl Howard earlier reached an agreement with prosecutors and pleaded guilty to 4 felonies in the death of Chad Ensel. The body of the 42-year-old victim was found in January of last year after a house fire northeast of Bismarck. Ensel died of gunshot wounds to the head. Investigators say Nikki Sue Ensel and Howard were in a romantic relationship and that she took out a $26,000 life insurance policy on her husband in the days before his death. We'll stay mostly cloudy overnight, Fargo-Moorhead. Overnight low about 6 degrees. Tomorrow, just 10 for a high, likely in the morning. Partly to mostly cloudy, and then temperatures holding steady or slowly falling. Mostly sunny then Thursday, just 1 for the afternoon high. Friday, 25, mostly cloudy, windy, chance of light snow, blowing snow, and after that 25-degree high, temperatures steady or slowly rising. Mostly cloudy, 23. Paul Jerkins, News Radio, KFGO.
Well, welcome back there, Rusty Halverson.
Hey, Tyler.
We're talking about Grand Forks last hour.
Yep.
You were doing some more work on Grand Forks this last hour.
Yep, cutting up a little bit of audio. Yeah, we touched on the topic of a Chinese company seeking to build a new corn milling plant in Grand Forks. Jared Haggart, a farmer from Emerado, North Dakota, has served on many commodity organizations, served on the United Soybean Board. He's been farming since the 90s, went to NDSU. He's knowledgeable in the area. And so we visited a bit. He testified before the Grand Forks City Commission in favor of this corn plant. Came up with various reasons why he thinks it would be beneficial to corn producers. For one, it's a new buyer for corn. Two, it's a new processor of corn for several different products, including amino acids and other things that are very beneficial when it comes to livestock feeding. And Jared said it goes beyond agricultural producers, too. That plant would hire more than 200 workers, according to planners. But again, it's in the planning stages still.
Well, in the planning, so you had the hearing yesterday, appropriate. I mean, process. We talked about that on the Castleton side here.
Sure.
So I have questions on that, but also on this one, because you've got the whole not in my backyard, which is common, I think, regardless of what community you're in on this. The fact that this is a Chinese company, have you heard, has that gotten brought up? Because it seems like that's the other unique situation here. As far as people that are saying, why do we want to do business there?
I believe it's come up.
Okay.
Yep, it has.
Okay. You don't want to, no more details provided. All right. I'll do my own homework on that. I'm not saying good, bad, or otherwise. It's just when you think about the points that could have been in opposition there, that seems like one that people would gravitate towards. So I'll look up on my own.
Okay, thanks, bud.
I can tell by the look in your eyes saying, yeah, it's come up a time or two, but nothing of which I want to touch on. So I tell you what, I'll do that on my own. Throw you under the bus.
No, that's okay. I mean, yes, that's one of the topics that did come up.
Well, and I mean, there are connections already there. You think about trade being a big thing when it comes to agriculture and what we've gone through when it comes to battles there. So
and I don't want to speak on behalf of Jared, but
no.
He's been chair of the United Soybean Board. He's been very involved in lots of big discussions when it comes to international trade and whatnot. And so, they have to follow U.S. laws if they want to do business here.
Right. Well, and that's somebody that's been involved in that on the big scale of those international partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
That carries a lot of weight when it comes to whether they support or oppose something.
I trust him.
Same.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Rusty.
Yep, you bet.
To startle you there for a minute.
No. Did I look like a deer in the headlights?
Just for a split second, you gave me that look like, how dare you? Appreciate it, man. We'll chat again tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, Rusty Alverson, Sarah Heinrich, best in the biz, multi-award winning. You can just go to kfgo.com and click on that agriculture tab to learn a little bit more. We're going to learn a little bit more about why electrical rates are going the way that they are. Marshall Albrecht, a friend of the show here, he's the president and CEO of Cass County Electric. We're going to visit with him right after the CBS National News.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people
all
down
right,
there.
folks,
to
we all
get
know it's
food
been
and stuff.
cold. Very cold this winter, but people have still been wondering why, in fact, electrical rates have been going up for those that have electrical heat. There has got to be more to it when we're hearing numbers into the KFGO studio that, from this point last year to this point now, when you're talking about rates doubling, not just with any particular company, what's behind it? Here to help us understand a little bit more is Marshall Albrecht. He is the president CEO of Cass County Electric, a friend of the show here. Marshall, how you been, man?
I'm great. How you doing, Tyler?
Doing well myself here. I figured I had to reach out. I've been getting a lot of questions as to why electrical rates are what they are, and it's not just isolated to say a Cass County Electric. You got Excel here. You got other power companies and consumers listening. All seem to be going through some of the similar questions. I'm just curious, what's the driving force behind this?
Well, if you look at electric rates, actually our electric rates have not gone up in the past year. When we look at specifically our off-peak heating rates, they've remained flat for just about 10 years now. What we've really seen this year over last year is the much colder winter. So we tend to forget, weather in the past. Looking back last January, if you look at what are called heating degree days, last January there were about 1,400 heating degree days in January. This year we were nearly at 1,900 heating degree days. So that's about a 35% increase in heating needs that are required to heat the home or business. And that has an impact not only on electric bills, but on natural gas heating, propane heating. Who's ever heating their buildings, their cost is probably up at 25 to 40% this winter just because it's been colder.
We've been noticing. Yeah, we've been noticing how dang cold it is. And today, and I think in the next couple of days, we're going to have that again. It doesn't ever seem to break here. There's been some throwing out there of, actually, I think it might have been the last time that we had a chance to visit with you on the show about, hey, we're starting to, pay for what happened down in Texas. And I know that we had some rolling brownouts because of some of the power grid itself there. And maybe not for Cass County, but just the general, you're very knowledgeable when it comes to electricity here. Are we suffering some of the costs of what happened last winter down in Texas still?
Yes. What you're seeing specifically is probably the price of natural gas for one thing. So natural gas right now is about double the cost it was last winter. So that has a huge impact not only on home heating cost, but also what it costs to produce power from natural gas. So that, of course, affects the wholesale power markets, raising the price of wholesale power too when a utility needs to purchase power off the wholesale market. So natural gas is a pretty big driver when it comes to the cost of electricity and home heating and business heating.
Did we correct what happened down in Texas last year? I mean, did they make some changes to where we're not going to see this again in the future? Because it seems like, I get it fluctuates. Last year we had a bit more of a mild winter, but did the problem get fixed?
Well, from what I understand, I think it's been fixed. I won't say 100% guarantee, but I've heard they've made some modifications to their resources down there that they're what we can call more hardened to deal with cold weather or more weatherized. A lot of the power plants really weren't designed to run in the wintertime, right, and they've required some of that to happen. So I doubt that we'll see that happening again in Texas, but you just never know. We're dealing with the power supply today that's a little more vulnerable or volatile than it used to be, just because we have less baseload power sources available every hour of the day.
When in North Dakota or in the upper Midwest, we're having those conversations again. You're talking about some plants more on the western side of the state being sold for a variety of new technologies, perhaps. What do you see happening as far as this reliability going forward? Just because there are so many different aspects now of what you can get power and what you purchase from.
Well, I'll just give you a great example. So we have both coal, wind, and hydro as our power sources that we get from Dakota Power. And we've had one power plant down for some maintenance, and so we're relying on the wind a lot to fill in those needs. And just as an example, this morning, it was pretty good wind. During midday, it was strong, but now it's almost down to zero again. The challenge is to schedule power around that wind, and that's where natural gas comes in. We don't have natural gas, but a lot of utilities around the country will ramp up their gas when the wind production goes down to meet the needs for power demand.
Mm-hmm. The natural gas aspect, we look about western North Dakota. Natural gas, in fact, has been discussed because of the global aspects. Have we done enough investment to capture what we have right here in North Dakota and get that out to those homes and businesses?
Yeah, the challenge there with natural gas is there's all kinds of natural gas out west, but the challenge is pipelines. Yeah. So in order to get that gas to where it needs to be, we can't use enough gas in the state of North Dakota really to use it all up, so it would have to go elsewhere, be it Minneapolis, Chicago, wherever it needs to go. But they need to put in pipelines for that to happen. And if that would happen, that would sure help supply more gas to the country and keep our gas price more stable.
Well, that certainly makes sense. That's when it comes to this infrastructure investment. I hope that this is something that's being considered, but that's a conversation I'm not going to pull you into when it comes to the administrative tasks here. Back to Cass County Electric, though. I mean, it sounds as though things have been quite steady as far as year to year and what just the rates are. Quite frankly, it's just Mother Nature impacting us so much, huh?
Yeah, it is. Like I said earlier, our power sources are not affected by the commodity markets because our wind contracts are a set price. And our coal is just basically the cost to mine the coal and produce the power from our coal plants is our power cost. And that really has remained fairly stable over the past 5 to 10 years.
Marshall, I got a caller with a question. Is it all right if I get Jack on with you?
Sure.
Very good. Jack, you're on with Marshall Albrecht with Cass County Electric. You got a question?
Hello, gentlemen. I have two questions for the RA man there.
Yeah.
Years ago, we have dual heat here, and
yep.
I appreciate that. But years ago, 20, 30 years ago, when it was a cold wave, then they would come on and say, try not to use your cooking and your heating and your washing and that so we can handle the load better and that we don't have to kick people off more often. Why don't you guys do that anymore?
Yeah, it's interesting that sometimes we don't control when it's cold like we used to. It's mainly power market price driven is when we control loads now, and it's way more challenging today to deal with volatility of the wholesale market than it ever has been in the past. Okay. And it's probably going to get more challenging in the future.
I see in the last highlight notes that there was a note that the off-peak will be kicked off more often this winter.
Yeah, and that's primarily due to the high-priced power market.
Okay.
So if Minnesota Power, for example, can purchase power that's reasonable, then they will not control loads. But because of the higher natural gas prices, that has caused the power markets to be higher in price this year.
All right. And question number 2.
Yeah.
I know when our West Acres was built, NSP at that time would not come out, so the Kindred came and provided the power to them.
Yep.
Are they on dual heat at any point?
They've been using natural gas for quite a long time now.
Oh, okay.
Instead of the off-peak electric, yes.
Okay.
Because our rates did go up about 10 years ago, and natural gas went down about 10 years ago substantially. So it made more economic sense for them to run natural gas at the
Isn't it amazing, though, what happened in 1972 and now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great deal for them for many, many years.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Hey, Jack, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling in. Marshall, there you go. We got some listeners out there with questions themselves. Anything else you want to get out about how Cass County has been so reliable before I let you go?
We always look forward to see what we need to do to prepare for the future from a power supply perspective. And that's something we're really looking at, with our coal resources and how we can move forward in the future. We're potentially looking at some carbon capture and sequestration technologies at our power plant to hopefully continue to run those in the future. And we'll just see where that goes. If the costs come in reasonable, that's something we may consider doing.
Very good. Marshall, I always appreciate the check-in. We'll do it again soon, all right?
Okay, thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, you take care. Marshall Albrecht, he is with Cass County Electric. Have you been noticing your rates going up for other providers? Been hearing a lot about it lately, and I just noticed it's one of those, when you open it up, it kind of shocks you a little bit. Got to get you that weather update while you send those into 35270. When we come back at the top of the hour, let's talk about the Poles and Holes fishing derby that's taking place in Detroit Lakes this Saturday. Got some tickets that I want to get from me to you. We got it locked into KFGO Fargo.
Carson here with another Don News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Dear
Mighty
Kansas
790.
Couch Potato Radio. Did
JJ
you
Gordon
see that
from It
game?
Takes Two.
Doug here with the morning crew this morning.
News Radio.
Haley Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces.
Too tall,
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out. And just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Detroit Lake's going to be buzzing. We already told you about a vintage snowmobile ride, but how about the Poles and Holes Fishing Derby? I've got some tickets, some passes that I want to get from me to you, and to explain what you can expect when you go is Brent Gerber. He's with the Poles and Holes Committee. He joins us right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, mostly cloudy. Fargo-Moorhead, it's 23 degrees. I'm Paul Jerkins. A Fargo man has been charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, domestic violence, and theft after his arrest by Fargo police. 27-year-old Tyler Molnar is accused of stabbing his wife late Saturday night. The complaint says she was sleeping in the passenger side of their van when she awoke to find Molnar stabbing her and saying he planned to kill her. She jumped out of the moving van on 42nd Street and was found by two citizens who reported that she was bloody and hysterical. Police say Molnar was arrested yesterday afternoon at the Fleet Farm convenience store driving a stolen pickup. Prior to his arrest, Moorhead police responded to a call of a suspicious man in a red van who was discarding items. The person was not located, but a wallet with the victim's driver's license was recovered, along with a bloody kitchen knife. The woman suffered stab wounds to her right shoulder, back, neck, and hand. The Canada-U.S. border crossing at Emerson, Manitoba, north of the North Dakota border, should end shortly. That blockade has been in place since last week. The Manitoba RCMP is coordinating the departure of the remaining demonstrators and expects that will be completed by tomorrow. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergency Powers Act for the first time ever as protests in Ottawa and elsewhere across the country were ongoing for weeks, demanding an end to COVID-19 mandates and restrictions, among other issues. The Emerson border crossing had been closed since last week. A change to the state constitution that would place term limits on the governor and members of the North Dakota legislature is a step closer to being before voters in November. Secretary of State Al Jagger says backers have submitted about 46,000 signatures, or more than the 31,000 needed to put the proposal to voters in November. Jagger has 35 days to review the signatures. The Minneapolis Office of Police Conduct Review is planning a special review of the police department and the no-knock warrant policy following the deadly shooting of Amir Locke.
According to the Minneapolis Office of Police Conduct Review, which is part of the city's Civil Rights Department, the review will focus on identifying and recommending specific changes and improvements to departmental policy and procedures. The agency is also tasked with investigating officer misconduct complaints. However, that is a separate process from policy review and takes place independently. The review follows MPD's no-knock warrant request that led police to the downtown apartment where Amir Locke was shot and killed after police entered the apartment as part of a St. Paul homicide investigation.
That is reporter Mark Fry. KFGO Weather Center forecast remaining mostly cloudy overnight, Fargo-Moorhead, with a low of about 6 degrees. Tomorrow, partly to mostly cloudy, breezy, some blowing snow once again in open areas. High in the morning of about 10, and then steadier, slowly falling temperatures. Thursday, mostly sunny, 1 above for the high, 25. Friday, mostly cloudy, windy, chance of light snow, maybe some blowing snow. Saturday, Sunday, mostly cloudy for the weekend, chance of light snow Saturday night and Sunday, 22-25. Fargo-Moorhead, 23. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Folks, I tell you what, Detroit Lake's going to be buzzing this coming week, and we've already visited about the DL Vintage Rally and Swap Meet. We'll tell you more about that later on, but there's other activities going on, including the 12th annual Poles and Holes Fishing Derby that's brought to you by the DL Breakfast Rotary Club. Here to tell you more about that and why you're going to want these tickets I've got in my hand. Brent Gerber, part of that committee. Brent, appreciate you coming in the studio. How you doing, man?
Hey, good. Good afternoon.
Crazy week, I imagine, the build up to all this, all the work that's been going on, and Saturday's the day.
Well, it is. It's, the weather is such that every year we kind of hold our breath, and I just heard Tom's forecast. Looks great, 20 degrees on Saturday.
Can't ask for much more.
By the standards of this winter, that's balmy.
That is be T-shirt weather for some people out there. Not encouraging that, but I'm just saying.
It might happen.
It's going to feel good, as long as that dang wind, which is
That's
such
right.
a Midwestern thing to say, but
it's true.
Weather looks like it's going to cooperate, and we're talking about 12 years that this has been going on. This is going to be the 12th. That means there's been some success here.
Absolutely. This is an event that's raised over $200,000 for projects that the Breakfast Rotary Club works on. We do a lot of things in the community, assisting with building projects, with youth programs. We particularly spend a lot of time and effort on literacy. Just this week during the Polar Fest in Detroit Lakes, we've had 3 or 4 different places where free books are distributed to young kids. Just an effort that we really are very committed to.
Well, that's a great cause. I mean, when it comes to getting out in that community, that's what I love about these clubs, whether it's the Rotaries or others, is look, it's a group of people that care about the community. We're going to find ways to have fun and then put that back in to the community.
Well, listen, we've been cooped up inside for too long, and I think as service club members, we want to encourage people to get out and serve and to get out and recreate in the winter.
When we chose to live here, ladies and gentlemen, you know what you've gotten yourself into. You got to find a way to enjoy it, and what better way than a fishing derby? That's going to be this Saturday. That's February 19th, if you got your calendars ready. Gates open at 9 o'clock. Derby begins at 12. So what do people expect? I've got tickets I'm going to give away here. Don't call in yet. But, tickets, if people don't win these, there's still some available, I assume?
Absolutely. We all of our tickets this year in advance are being handled online. That's at icefishingdetroitlakes.org. That gives you all the information you need about the Derby, too. Day of, the tickets will be still available. They're just $5 more. All the tickets that we sell entitle you to fish 2 lines. So you got twice the chance of winning. And that prize package, we just looked it over. It's spectacular. We're featuring 3 fairly significant prizes. A skid house from, what's the name of the company? Striker, yes, right? And then a 4-wheeler for Polaris and a beautiful utility trailer that came from Outlet Recreation. So those 3 are sprinkled in, and that fish house is the 30th and final prize. So all day long, that prize is going to be changing hands. It's going to be real exciting out on the ice to watch that.
You're going to be sticking around for the whole show is what I'm saying
That's
there.
right.
The Derby begins at noon, and you can't excuse the weather. I'm already looking at it, and we just mentioned Two Tall Tom's going to get you an update in about half hour time here. Is there a limit as far as how many holes are going to be drilled? How many people are ready? Because you say, there's going to be some tickets available day of.
Right. It's hard to manage all of that. But we start at 7 o'clock in the morning with the Detroit Lakes High School football team out there helping us drill all those holes.
Get them boys to work.
That's right. It's part of their community service commitment, believe it or not.
That's an okay community service. I think about some of the other things that could be a lot worse.
Yeah, and I just wish they'd wear better shoes, but I'm an old fart, Anyway, we start early, and, we are somewhat a slave to where the other fish houses are and where the ice is decent. So we're probably going to be in a little bit more shallow water this year than we are some years. But that means just about anybody can win. You don't have to be an expert fisherman. If you just hook a big bass or even a nice panfish, might just win this tournament.
Well, there you go. So, if you're about the skill level that I've got, you still got a shot, is what I'm hearing.
That's true.
And there's so many prizes here, 15,000 in raffle prizes, over 30,000 in derby prizes. There's something for a little bit of everybody here. There's local foods, drink, the lodging. You think you've been to Detroit Lakes and you haven't, you've been missing out. You think about the Polar castle that they have on now. You've got this going on. It's just going to be a great weekend.
Well, this is all part of Polar Fest in Detroit Lakes, which is about a 3-week long event this week. It kicked off last weekend with the unveiling of that wonderful ice palace with fireworks behind it. It really brings a lot of people to town. We'd love if you'd just come get a hotel room and stay for the weekend, because there is lots of stuff going on.
It's a hop, skip, and a jump for many of you listening to me right now on 790 AM or 104.7 FM. I was out there a couple of weeks before the castle was done, so that means I've got to come out. In fact, I think a little bit of breaking news. I'm probably going to be out there on Friday getting you ready for this Pulls and Holes and for the vintage snowmobile ride, because I got to see it for myself.
Well, that'd be fantastic. We might even be able to have you help us plow some snow.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see how we're get out there. Put me to work, Brent. I appreciate that. Asking I shall receive. So location-wise, I'm seeing it's north side of the Little Detroit Lake, which makes sense.
Yeah, if you go straight out from the Rossman Public Access on Rossman Avenue there, just a little bit further down from Zorba's, a local landmark there. It's straight out from there, and we'll be kind of nestled in amongst the snowmobile rally there. But parking at the fairgrounds is easy access to park there. The gates open at noon, we said. At 9 o'clock, at 9 o'clock the gates open. There's generally a few hardy souls who are already standing in line about 7 o'clock.
Pick the right hole.
That's right. That's right. I'd love to find out if there's really a correlation, but I've never tracked that specifically.
Yeah.
But
we watch that. I'll be watching that for you.
Yeah, there you go. And at 3 o'clock, things wrap up. We award all the prizes at a post party at the Holiday Inn in Detroit Lakes, so everybody's nice and warm and talking smart about their fishing experiences.
And stories, and they grow bigger by the hour, I imagine, as well. What else about this am I missing, Brent? This just sounds like a great time. The entire weekend at Detroit Lakes sounds like a good time.
It's great times. Remember that you mentioned a raffle there. That's separate from the fishing derby, and you can get those tickets from any breakfast Rotarian, from any of the local bait shops in Detroit Lakes, Quality Bait, County 6 Bait and Tackle, the Lake Sports Shop in Detroit Lakes, lots of locations. Again, go to that website, icefishingdetroitlakes.org. You're going to find all the information you need there. And if you got any questions, there's a place to ask questions and contact us on that site too.
Yeah, icefishingdetroitlakes.org, www in front of that. You can get your tickets there. All the information right there. And the Breakfast Rotary just doing great work.
Well, we pride ourselves on doing stuff not just locally with the various projects we work on, but Rotary International is doing great work all across the world. Rotary is involved in the eradication of polio, believe it or not, and polio is down to one country where there still is endemic of polio. Not that many cases, but as our Rotary says, we're this close to eradicating polio.
Just a general question. When you think about these service groups, the notion is that membership hasn't been what it once was. Are you seeing that change at all? Because when I think about the last couple of years, there's been people wanting to, stay more local. They want to get involved in other ways. I'm just curious, membership, are you still looking to get members if they're listening to me in Detroit Lakes?
We're always looking for members. The pandemic and how we accessed everything changed during the pandemic. So we did a lot of Zoom meetings. Now we're back to in-person meetings. Some people still listening in on Zoom. Everybody's preferences are a little bit different. And so getting a handle on what your membership is always difficult. But this club is a club of 60 or 70 people that meets every Tuesday morning for breakfast. We're about equally split between males and females, and we have a wide distribution of ages. So it's a pretty healthy club, and it's just one of a half a dozen healthy service clubs in Detroit Lakes. And service is really an important thing, as people can resist that temptation to just stay at home and kind of take care of themselves. The world needs service more now than ever.
That's a great way to put that. It really is. Brent, anything else about whether it's the Rotary, about the Poles and Holes, about the weekend at Detroit Lakes before I let you go?
Just a lot of fun to be had. Even on that website, there's information about lodging, all kinds of stuff. There's a connection to that Polar Fest website. Lots of great stuff happening in Detroit Lakes, and those of us who live there are really proud to show it off.
Well, there's a lot to show off there. There's no doubt. There's a reason people always want to get out there and enjoy the time. I've enjoyed the conversation, Brent. I'm going to let you go, and you're going to see me out there probably on Friday, all right?
Sounds good.
Brent Gerber, he's with the Poles and Holes Committee, and again with the DL Breakfast Rotary. I've got a pair of passes to the Poles and Holes Fishing Derby this Saturday. We just told you gates open at 9. Derby begins at noon. If you can get out there, you want to get in for free on the house, be caller number 5, 237-59 for it. I've got a pair of tickets here for you. This is Afternoons Live on KFGO. Stick around.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. When we're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
So today on MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with
according to the Minneapolis Office
mallets,
of Police Conduct
hammers,
Review, which is part of the
types
city's Civil Rights Department. The review will focus on identifying and recommending specific changes and improvements to departmental policy and procedures. The agency is also tasked with investigating officer misconduct complaints. However, that is a separate process from policy review and takes place independently. The review follows
Holy. Poles in the holes tickets, hot commodity. Couldn't keep you off the phones. Mark Volk, congratulations, man. You're going, you and a friend, a family, going down. This whole operation that's going on, whether it's the Rotary putting on this 12th annual, whether it's the DL Vintage Rally swap meet, the radar run, we had Wayne on to talk about the snowmobile, because there's a whole thing. There's just a lot that's going on in Detroit Lakes this weekend. And as you heard, it's part of the event that's going to go on, I believe, for another week as well. I'm going to make it a point to get out there. In fact, we're finalizing some details about Friday getting on down. So hopefully you can get on down there, grab a hotel, have a good time. And in fact, you can go, as you're just hearing from Brent Gerber about ice fishing, DetroitLakes.org. They've got the lodging. They've got all of it right there for you. So, and then, of course, it's going to a good cause as well. But you think of, if you've been to Detroit Lakes, you know that landscape. You think about the castle. You think about the snowmobiles that you're going to be seeing. You're thinking about those that are going to be out there ice fishing. It's just going to be a great time. So take advantage of it while you can. I'm looking at the forecast, and again, we'll hear from Too Tall Tom about 15 minutes or so. Saturday, though, looking, chance of just light snow. But we're looking at highs in the 20-25 mark compared to what we have been over the last, what feels like 6 months. 25 degrees doesn't sound too bad. We'll have a little bit more. So I said it was a hot commodity. In just a little bit, maybe I have a couple more passes that I can get from us to you in just a little bit. That's not going to be right now. So don't be calling in just quite yet. Here, help me out on this one thing that I saw a couple of weeks ago as well, because I knew nothing of this brand until I saw a sign, and I didn't get an explanation for it either. But maybe it's one of those that was ahead of its time. And I'm talking about Dakota Beer. That was the name, and I believe it was made in Bismarck or Mandan. I had never heard of it until I saw, quite frankly, a sign at one of those places up north that we have now become friends with. And I want to thank Craig for listening to the show as well. But have you ever heard of Dakota beer? Eric, you've been involved with...
I've not. The main one coming out of Bismarck, Laughing Sun, obviously,
right.
that's the one
That's
that
why
everybody
I think
knows.
This is an old-timey sign. I mean, this is like a vintage, I don't know, I have no idea. I tried doing the Google on it of who made it, where, what was the time frame.
So we did go down that rabbit hole of the North Dakota Centennial and there being a beer associated with it.
Correct. And was that the Dakota beer that people were telling us? Because we're talking about the coats and hearing about, there was a variety of those, and certainly there were some that were a lot better than others. Because I looked up what some of you were sporting. I have the red one still hanging in our closet here. Was it? I think it was. That had to have been the Dakota beer, which to me tells me how much more rare that sign would have been.
Yeah, we had a couple, not beer, but we had a couple of the Centennial posters.
Right,
there was a framed print of various old buildings from North Dakota.
Now that you brought that up, I recall somebody saying, yeah, those bottles had Dakota beer. And I think, and if I'm wrong, by all means, 35270. That's the North Dakota Eye Consultants Text Club, or call me at 237-5948. That is the Laney Studio Line. Final half hour. We can get back into something that was thrown at me by two separate mics yesterday about this whole, what do we call it here? The report that came out last Friday, the Durham report. Why isn't anybody talking about this is being thrown around? Well, some of what was, and I'm using air quotes here, revealed on Friday has been a topic of conversation for like 4 years. So you've got this court filing that was about this use of internet data. You've got, media on the right side of the political aisle. So you're thinking about your Fox News, your Newsmax, all of that coming up. And they're using terms like infiltrate. But if you look at what the document says, they don't say that there was any crime committed, right? We'll talk about it when we come back. In the meantime, hey, do you want to go ahead and win another thing of tickets? I'll tell you how when we come back. I'm getting a lot of Dakota beer signs when we come back. I'm Tyler Axis. You got to locked into Kfto Fargo.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Rick Electric. Proud to serve the Fargo-Moorhead area since 1964. Day or night, they're here for you. Find them at rickelectric.com.
Fargo-Moorhead, it is cloudy, 23 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. A Fargo man has been charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, domestic violence, and theft after his arrest by Fargo police. 27-year-old Tyler Molnar is accused of stabbing his wife late Saturday night. The complaint says she was sleeping in the passenger side of their van when she awoke to find Molnar stabbing her and saying he planned to kill her. She jumped out of the moving van on 42nd Street South and was found by 2 citizens who reported that she was bloody and hysterical. Police say Molnar was arrested yesterday afternoon at the Fleet Farm convenience store, driving a stolen pickup. An assistant Moorhead fire chief who was cited for DUI test refusal after a collision in West Fargo is no longer a member of the fire department. The city will not say whether Kayla Cross was fired or whether her leaving is related to the collision. The crash took place at Cheyenne Street and I-94. The driver of the other car was seriously hurt. Cross is also the fire chief with the Mapleton, North Dakota Fire Department. The mayor says the city will not take any action until the case against Cross is resolved. 23, this is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. The Canada-U.S. border crossing blockade at Emerson, Manitoba, north of the North Dakota border, should end shortly. The Manitoba RCMP is coordinating the departure of the remaining demonstrators and expects that will be completed by tomorrow. The Emerson border crossing had been closed since last week. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergency Powers Act for the first time ever as protests in Ottawa and elsewhere across the country were ongoing for weeks. Demonstrators are demanding an end to COVID-19 mandates and restrictions, among other issues. Police in Watertown, South Dakota, were called to a downtown fire station early this morning on a report of an armed man who appeared to be intoxicated and was threatening to take his own life. Officers found the man in the station's lobby with a pistol. The man refused officers' commands to drop the weapon and threatened to kill himself. Officers began firing beanbag rounds at the man and were able to take him into custody. Although the pistol looked like a regular weapon, it was an airsoft gun. After a lengthy discussion, the Grand Forks City Council has given preliminary approval to a development agreement to bring a corn milling plant to North Grand Forks. The legal package with the Chinese-based Fufeng Group spells out the framework of the deal. Members also endorsed a series of engineering service contracts for the project. Prior to the vote, the City Council took comments from the audience. Emerado agribusiness owner and State Representative Jared Haggard says the project is a win-win for the economy of both the city and the state.
And North Dakota deals in commodities, in energy and ag. I mean, that's where our revenues come from. So anytime that we can have a facility of this magnitude come into our region as a producer, it's a tremendous benefit to us.
Grand Forks resident Betsy Perkins has environmental concerns.
What are we in Grand Forks doing to help save the planet? Instead of subsidizing this processing plant, I would like Grand Forks to be a leader and set example for other communities by saying no to Fufeng and instead create a climate change mitigation plan.
Final approval on this step in the process is expected next week. Fargo-Moorhead remaining mostly cloudy. Overnight we look for a low of about 6 degrees. Then tomorrow, 10 above in the morning, and then steadier folding temperatures, partly to mostly cloudy, some blowing snow. Mostly sunny Thursday, the high near 1. Friday, mostly cloudy, windy. Chance of light snow, blowing snow, high of 25. For the weekend, mostly cloudy. Chances of light snow, at least Saturday night and Sunday, 22, 25. Mostly cloudy, 23 degrees. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Topic at hand, Dakota beer. What was it? Was it any good? Gerald's got some comments on it. Gerald, how you doing this afternoon?
Hey, doing pretty good.
So I saw this sign, right, and I was asking, I go, I have never heard of Dakota beer, and apparently this is a thing. So explain it to me, Gerald.
Well, I'm trying to remember the exact years because it was back in the 60s, I believe, or maybe at the latest, the early 70s. Mm-hmm. It was not very good beer.
There's a reason why it wasn't around very long, huh?
No, it did not last very long, and I don't know if it was just poor brewing or what it was, but I remember that I drank a few six-packs of it. It was not anything that turned my head, that's for sure.
Was it Was it affordable? Is that why there was a few 6-packs of it, Gerald?
Well, it was kind of the going rate for like Hams and Schmidt and all the other beers at that time.
Oh boy, I wish those prices were still going today, but not the case, my man. Gerald, I appreciate the phone call. Anything else?
Nope, that'll do it.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks. Not very good. Maybe that's why. The sign there's things. The advertising works, ladies and gentlemen. That's why when he sees it, and you're intrigued. But I couldn't find, and it's not that I'm not tech savvy. I'm not great at it, but I'm not terrible. I couldn't find a whole heck of a lot on it. So that's why I rely on you as listeners that have been around to indulge or to, in fact, just know more than I. And you can continue to call into the Laney studio line. That's 237-5948. Or you could go ahead and text me at 35270. CBS National News is on the way. You know, this whole Pulls and Holes fishing tournament, you want to go? I got another pair of tickets. If you want to go ahead and text in Derby to 35270, and if you get a text back from me, you're going to be heading out there on Saturday as well. Just Derby to 35270. If you text that in, I will respond to one of you, and you and a friend are going out to do some fishing at the Pulls and Holes this Saturday. CBS National News on the way. More Afternoons Live right after this.
Roberson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek
Mighty
Hansen, Couch
790.
Potato Radio. Did
JJ
you
Gordon
see
from
that
It
game?
Takes Two.
Doug here with the morning crew this
Paul
morning.
Jerkins News Radio.
Katie Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Forces.
Too tall, Tom.
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah
7.
Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
So today on the MSUM campus, we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate, but also have a sense of independence.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page, and send us a text anytime at 35270.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just getting the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night, the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11, and volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge needs in the community, and we got some things we got to address.
Phone lines are full. I'm going to take them in the order which they come, and that means we're going to be visiting with Pete. Pete, you're on Afternoons Live. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
All right. What do you got for me?
Well, the more I think about this old Dakota beer, it seems to me that they, I heard that they put the brew out on the market before it was really ready to market, and so it didn't taste the best, and it killed their brand right there.
Well, that's too bad if that's how that fluctuated out, because you think about, as our previous caller, you think about hams, you think about some of the other area that was able to succeed, and if it comes down to timing and just getting out too early, that's why I'm curious if what we're discussing was right when it came to the Centennial, if in fact that was the push, or if it just, look, somebody pulled the trigger too quick. And somebody out here in my text club says, and of course now I've lost it. I attempted to purchase the name a few years ago. Dakota Beer was owned and distributed in Grand Forks is what they're claiming, but I think it was Bismarck Mandan. They would buy bulk and relabel. But so you're saying too early and it ruined it for them, huh, Pete?
Yeah, it seems to me that was the thing that went around, that they were just too early. Beer wasn't quite ready to bottle it yet.
Sure. Pete?
Somebody got in a hurry.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we're a little impatient. If you listen to the show, you know that I fall in that category, Pete.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, thanks for the phone call. I appreciate it. That's why I throw it out to you as the listeners of Afternoons Live, because when you see it, you have to ask questions if you can't find it. Somebody actually is sending in a link. I will have to look that one up. The reason why I said was it too ahead of its time. And now you've got all these craft beers. I mean, there are breweries all over the country. And just within the bubble of what you're listening to me right now on 790 AM, or perhaps on kfgo.com, where you can take us anywhere. I mean, you can go and find that they're succeeding in large droves. Now, maybe that's the purchasing that we've done as consumers that's changed. Some of that's allowed them. We go out and seek these new breweries. But it just, I don't know, it's intriguing. So I appreciate some of that. There's more messages coming into the text club, but I told you the phone lines are full. So now I'm going to visit with Mike. Mike, are you an individual that called and brought this to my attention yesterday?
Yes, I did. And it's going to prove out to be very accurate. Just like Trump said, just like Mark Levin said, just like Breitbart News has talked about for several years.
So
go
ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the censorship of mainstream media is disgusting, and it's getting worse by the day.
So, Mike, when I tried to find out a little bit more on this, and again, I want to thank you for bringing it to my attention yesterday, I'm trying to figure out in here what's new that wasn't being discussed over the last couple of years, because you've got this filing that alleged that it was this pro-Clinton researcher that used an internet data that was meant to eavesdropping on content. But my question comes when it goes to infiltrate is what is being done. I think I saw that on Fox News. And yes, for those yesterday, I said, I'm not going there for my news, but I was curious because that's where this is coming from. The Durham filing never said that there was any infiltration. In fact, they were saying, no, this was legal access to the servers brought on by contracts there. So I'm curious. I don't see if there's any filing in here that says it was complete spying, because the other thing that caught my attention when we talk about this White House, that they were using data from the White House, that was during the Obama administration and not Trump. Do you have an answer to me or for me on that?
They're proving that I mean, it was said, and of course, the Democrats pushed that. Oh no, that never happened. The Durham report is going to show that this stuff did happen, and they've got proof of it. And you watch and see. It's going to start coming out. There's going to be arrest warrants given, and there's the meetings. There was meetings with Brennan, Biden, Obama, Hillary during this time when Trump was in the campaign mode. And they're going to, and it's interesting that they let Brennan do this because he's been given special prosecutor status. And they're starting to prove what Trump has been saying all along.
So my question, Mike, recall that there was hacking that was done on the DNC, and I thought the RNC was hacked too. We haven't been revealed on that, but there was some with the White House that was done by Russia. That's why I think some of this whole trying to poke around of why, how deep did they go to figure it out. If in fact there was that, and if there were people from and around the, say, Trump campaign, the Clinton campaign, I don't care, pick any campaign, and they were visiting with Russia based on election things, do you think it is appropriate to investigate that?
That's what the investigation is, because Hillary, the campaign, made sure that they made it look like the Trump campaign was going or was talking to the Russians, and they weren't. And that's the thing about it, is that they're proving it, and that's why there's nobody on the national news media that's even talking about it, because they know that they've got proof. It's going to start rolling, and there's going to be more and more crap coming out.
Mike, one thing that I said yesterday ago, I don't go to Fox News, I don't go to MSNBC, but I went to both to get a hold of this now. MSNBC was covering it, CNN's covering it, and New York Times is watching. Those major media outlets are starting to cover this, Mike.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. They have to almost, because it's news out there, and there's enough smaller. You know what? I read a lot of Breitbart News, New York Post, in addition to the national news media hasn't even covered this. Zero time across most of it right now, and CNN had 90 seconds on it until today. And this is the problem. There's so much censorship by the left-wing news media, which is the mainstream media, to be honest with you, Tyler, and you know that.
Mike, but I'm not going to Breitbart and considering that a legitimate post, just like there's other, I'm trying to think of a left-leaning source that, what is it, Politics, Facts, USA, or whatever. I can't go to those and take those serious out there. When it comes to this, my final question before
Can you take NBC and CBS and MSNBC and all those, and you think that they're accurate?
Mike already mentioned the MSNBC. I gave up my cable news watching years ago. My final question before I got to get a weather update, and I've appreciated the conversation. No, but if Durham had, because he was part of Bill Barr, right, the Attorney General at that time, then why has nothing been done? They've had the ability to press charges, but they didn't. So my question is why, Mike?
Because they're trying to prove it. They're getting the information, and they had the gang to get all this information. Why do you think this report came out now? Because it's taken them. You know, I was wondering why it hasn't been more stuff said all along. It's because they keep. I'm sure they're getting pushback from everybody in the government, and they finally have got enough clout, and they're getting the information. There's going to be more and more stuff coming out, and it's proven that the Mark Levins and the Breitbart News and those are way more accurate than ABC and CBS and NBC, because all they do are left-leaning.
Well, Mike, even though I think those sources, I'm going to let you go because I got to get this weather that are completely right-wing, pulled in that direction. I get it. We go to those bubbles that make us get what we want to hear at times, but I do appreciate you go to those and you listen to Afternoons Live. I got to get this weather update from Too Tall Tom. Number of phone calls, the text messages getting full. I got to wrap up the show next.
Roberson here with another News Radio.
Hey, this is Abby Miller with the
Derek Hansen, Couch Potato Radio. Did you see that
from It Takes Two?
Doug here with the morning crew this morning.
News Radio.
Eiler with It Takes Two.
This is Jack Michaels, Voices Force.
Too Tall Tom.
Joel Heitkamp here on the Mighty
Sarah Heinrich.
Tyler Axis, your host.
The Mighty 790 and 104.7 FM KFGO. The names you know, the voices you trust.
Thanks for watching News and Views on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and like our page. And send us a text anytime at 35270.
So today on MSUM campus we're doing an ice jam, which is we're combining a bunch of percussion instruments with ice instruments, which are also going to be used in a percussive form. We're going to hit them with mallets, hammers, all those types of things. Today is all improv, so we're all just kind of working with ideas that we just kind of think of as we go, and we kind of play off each other, and it's fun to collaborate but also have a sense of independence.
Well, we're doing a food giveaway event to the community. A lot of people are facing food insecurity at this time. As we can tell, we had to start about an hour early because we just had so many people lined up. So as people come up and they need whatever they need, volunteers are taking care of it. It's all contactless, so nobody has to get out, and just making sure whatever the greatest need. We're just giving the greatest good. We're going until the food is out. As people are coming in, if they need 2 boxes and 2 gallons of milk, that's what we're giving. We don't want to leave anybody out.
I was in the hospital, and I saw a flyer on the wall. And all the nurses were talking about taking people down there to get food and stuff. I got out last night. Got out of the hospital last night, and I said, man, I'm going to do this. When I came from Williston here, I lived on these streets for 3 years, caring. And that's what this is. That's the way I see it. Very helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful because I know people that are doing without.
I think it's truly remarkable how much need there is out there. Like I said, we were going to start at noon, but we had so many people lined up. We started at 11. And volunteers have been working their tail off since then. I'm thankful for that. I think this shows that there is some huge